comecei a assistir, depois parei.
Have waited enough for the original God of War to get a remake.
O cara já criou.
Like Sony doesn't even care. Fuck it. I'm gonna do it myself. Or at least I'm gonna try. I started with
Opa, peraí, galera. Se vocês entenderem, né, também. Ele tem legenda e tudo, mas... Mas tudo que temos apenas o remix, para que a Sony nem se importa. Eu vou fazer isso sozinho. Eu comecei com um base, mas esculpi sua cabeça.
More like Kratos, and here we have Kratos, who's on drugs. I sculpted his body, gave him some muscle, drew some veins and details here.
Olha isso, mano, olha isso aqui. Você nem onde é que faz essa porra?
After adding all the body details, now it was time for some texture. I added a white painting for his skin, and of course we can't forget about the detail. Then I drew the iconic red tattoo on his body. In the original God of War, Kratos had this extra tattoo on his left arm, which is removed later on in the sequel game. But I wanted to be faithful to the original design as much as possible, so I painted that.
Ou seja, a tatuagem era de um jeito e foi trocada, né?
Ladies and gentlemen, Kratos! Oh, but he's still naked. So let's make him some clothes. For the clothes and accessories, I have used a bunch of different techniques. I used the cloth simulation to make the skirt, selected some faces, extruded them outward, wrapped some bandages and chains around his forearm. I modeled some sandals. Alright, I'm not gonna pretend that I know everything. To me, modeling is just about pushing and pulling vertices until it looks good enough.
Mano, mas que seria massa, velho, ver essa porra, mano.
The accessories, I've brought them into Substance Painter and textured them as well. I even tried to paint the smaller details like the blood stains, the dirt.
O cara é bom, velho. Por que esse cara não já tá trabalhando como design de games, pô?
But it doesn't move. You know, in order to make a character move in 3D, we have to utilize
já tá aí a porra?
rigging. Well, I'm pretty sure it's not
Não, eu tenho certeza que eu sei que é o...
You do? Alright, I'm gonna explain it anyway. Rigging is basically the part where you put some bones inside of your mesh so
Como é que é feito o movimento?
You can also customize the shapes of the bones to your liking so it's more manageable and less like your words. For that purpose, I'm gonna use the Blender Rigify add-on to make it easier. I also made the sandals wrinkle when bent. It's a small detail, but that will be cool since we'll have close-ups later on. Now Kratos is able to move! Let's go! For the skirt, I added a cloth simulation to make it move realistically, but I failed again, and again, and again, and again! I found this tutorial from Edin Spiegel, and it worked. But when Kratos turns around, it messes up again! Leave it alone. It's not gonna move a lot anyway. I was aiming for recreating the intro of God of War 1 when Kratos jumps down from the mountain, and that's about 10 shots. I'll start with the menu, where Kratos is standing in the middle of fire. I just add Kratos to the scene, download some fire footage from Artlist, remove the watermark. Well, this is my first video. Yeah, I mean, of course I'm broke like basically everyone on starting YouTube. I then dropped the fire footage behind Kratos, added some lights, and gave them a subtle animation to simulate a flickering fire effect. If you look at the original game, Kratos is standing with his eyes closed, doing nothing, but I wanted to add more drama to it, so I animated Kratos as if he's remembering his past memories and feeling regret. Like, when we think about our ex, I remember how stupid we were. This is already looking so sick. I also thought it would be cool for his memories to show in the background, so I decided to use some of the original cutscenes from the game and blend them with the flames in After Effects. After adding the God of War title, the text and the buttons, our first shot is pretty much done. Now it's time for the most difficult shot. The cliff shot. Yeah, I grew a beard.
Mano, o cara inicia o vídeo praticamente sem barba, pô. Tá ligado aqui?
It was a very long project.
43 dias, pô. Ele fala, deu nem tempo pra falar, ele já tava falando. Cortei algum detalhe.
I have watched the original models closely and tried to replicate the details as close as possible to the original models of the game. I then dropped them into Substance Painter for some texturing. I started with painting the smaller details on the models.
Sabe o que é mais engraçado?
Sculpting them in 3D. After I finished detailing the statue, I gave it a rocky material with some dirt and then painted some
Mano, que deve dar trabalho pra fazer um jogo, meu irmão. Não tá escrito, mano.
Just painting some bump details, adding some patterns, cracks, dirt, imperfections, painting some gold, change some colors to add more variation, and we're done!
Novelização.
I know! Genius, right? I deserve an
Genial,
Oscar for
sério.
this. Now it's time to make the scene. I dropped a sky image for the background, then I placed the rock scans and the models I created into the scene. This part was really a big deal for me, since I never made an exterior environment before, so everything from the mountains to the 3D assembling was a learning curve. I watched
Olha pra porra que é pro cara criar só a montanha, porque o cara tem que fazer.
And I searched through tons of reference images
Estrutura
to capture
possível
the
de
right mood.
estrutura,
Since I
olha.
was working on a budget, I had to rely on free resources for skies. I even used AI to generate references. It was a lot of experimenting and trial and error, but seeing it all come together made it worth it. Wait, it looks like shit! I mean, everything is flat and boring. Oh, I know how to do it. With lighting. I masked some clouds, added them into the scene, added some gradients between the mountains to fake depth, placed some volumetric clouds in the foreground, and here comes the magic of lighting. I start with adding an
Animação
HDRI image,
começo.
and wow, it already looks amazing! To make it more interesting, I'm gonna adjust the effects of the clouds further. I added more lights to the scene to make the details pop even more. I even added some fog with a subtle animation to make it move slightly. Now it looks less like shit, which is good enough. By the way, this massive environment is just some rocks and planes floating around outside the camera view. And that is the first rule of VFX. As long as no one notices, you never fail. To me, Kratos' eyes were too lifeless, so I added two small point lights in front of his eyes to make him look more tearful, and it looks amazing, if you ask me. We certainly don't want Kratos to stand like Kate Winslet in the movie Titanic, so let's give him some movement. I have spent about 6 hours animating these few seconds. I really hate animating.
6 animando um pouco. 6 horas o cara animando isso aí,
If
velho.
you pay attention, you can see there are two crows flying around in the scene in the original game.
Sim.
For that, I found this
Ele não
model in
aparece aí
Sketchfab,
contra
which was
isso.
free by the way. I imported it into Blender and it looks like a bird who's trying to bully you for some reason.
Subscribe!
I duplicated the model, uploaded the animation, and then made them follow a path. For my shot, I wanted the birds to fly straight from where the camera is, and
de onde
cause
a
the camera
câmera
to
está.
wiggle a little because I think it will make it much cooler that way. And with that, the second shot is finished. In the original, the transition from the menu to the game is quite simple. The fire just fades out. But for my remake, I wanted to add more depth to the moment. So instead of fire just disappearing, I created this mask to make it slowly extinguish. As if the flame
Também,
being
por isso que
snipped
leva
out, leaving
anos
all
pra
the
fazer.
embers
É,
visible to the
mano.
sky. The rest of the
Isso é o
shots
cara
were much
sozinho, né,
easier.
também.
This shot where Kratos is looking down the abyss, I just changed the
68
camera
dias aí,
position.
ó.
The rock
Se
on the
liga.
street didn't have much detail, so I scattered a bunch of smaller rocks on the surface to make it more interesting.
Tá ligado,
And with that,
específico,
our
é
third
mais
shot is
interessante.
finished. For this shot where Kratos raises his foot, I changed the camera position
Só um
again and
movimentozinho aí, ó.
animated his legs using keyframes.
Onde?
Please help. In the original scene, you can see those pebbles fall after
Pô, do
Kratos
teclado
hits the
dele.
hill. So I added some small rocks and pushed them forward using an invisible box, and with that,
Olha
our
isso
fourth
aí.
shot is done. For the shots where Kratos is falling, I had very cool ideas by using AI. Well, not exactly, it's not AI, those are called modifiers. You pose your character into the desired position, select the body parts that you want them to move, and then add a noise modifier, and it's
Nice.
done. Oh my god, just imagine Kratos jumping from the cliff like this. This is too strong, I have to lower the intensity, and there you go. For the rocks behind him, I didn't want to model a whole mountain. and make
O
Kratos
Kratos
walk on it.
jogando,
It
ele
took
se
too much
desesperado
time.
pra não morrer mais.
But I had some tricks under my sleeve. Instead, I added a slender, scaled it, used a displacement modifier on it, applied the rocky texture on it, and then made it rotate along the x-axis. I animated
Esqueci,
the
pô,
button
até me
upwards
perdi
and
já.
gave the camera a shaking animation. And that's enough to sell the illusion of Kratos falling. Remember, as long as no one fails, it'll never notice.
Contato ninguém me fala.
Wait, for the rest of the shots, it was basically the same scene, I just changed the camera position. But for the close-up shots, I made some subtle facial animations, as if Kratos closes his eyes and accepts his fate. I mean, it's barely noticeable, but I thought it would be a cool detail to have. And finally, the ocean. I dropped a plane, added the ocean modifier, made some water material, and then used the same rocks I used in this scene and scattered them all over the surface. And finally, added 3 levels of clouds. Each of
mas
which
esse
is
cara é
different than the
bom,
previous
pelo
one,
amor
so
de
the fog
Deus.
gradually disappears. And with that, the final shot is done. To enhance the quality even further, I dropped them into DaVinci Resolve for some color grading. For the mood of the game, I was actually looking for something dark and
Oh,
sad.
tanto de
I used
coisa
this
dele.
image as my reference. You know, color grading isn't just about making something look cool, it's about feeling. I wasn't just pushing sliders, I was trying to capture a mood. Kratos was depressed and
Cadê o
disappointed,
dia?
and I wanted the colors to reflect that. And after over 3 months of modeling, texturing, rigging, animating, rendering, post-processing, I'm sure you want to subscribe. Please? But first, enjoy the first look of the God of War remake.
Caralho, mano.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
Olha essa porra, mano. A filma dele. Também fez ele quase sem unha, viu? Por isso. Olha essa cação, mano.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it
Caraca,
will
velho.
finally come. come to an end.
Ué, ele botou até uma respiração do Kratos caindo lá embaixo.
Would be his escape from muteness.
Quando é que esse bicho vai soltar a parte 2, mano, hein? Criaturas ridículas! Voltem de onde vieram! Mano, o cara só tem um vídeo, velho. Eu não vi, pô. Eu vi o trailer do Outlast, o Copa. Mano, o cara só tem um vídeo, o cara só postou um vídeo. E olha a porra aí, ó. 2,3 milhões.